you tell us about those that early time for you, why you decided to volunteer, and then how you decided to make that huge decision to get it all on camera?
Well, I saw it was November 2015, and I'd seen Calais in the news throughout the summer, and I'd seen this camp growing, and there was a lot of very quite negative coverage of the situation, and fear-mongering about refugees, and David Cameron referring to people as a swarm and all of that. So I was quite curious about the situation, and I think it was towards the end of November, a friend of mine posted on Facebook a shout-out for carpenters. That's my bread and butter on the side of filmmaking. And I decided to go out, and I was very fortunate to have the time and not have anything tying me down. And I went out for a week, and I sort of had it in my head, I'll go for a week, I'll do my bit, and build a few shelters, and then I stayed for another week, and because it was very desperate, the situation. There was a lot of people in need of very basic things, food, clothing, and shelter, women and children living in tents, and winter was coming. And then I think on my third week I met Liz, and Liz is the kind of person that when you meet her you just want to do whatever, you want to help her out and whatever she's doing, because she very much seemed like the adult in the room, and she seemed to have a plan or an idea of what needed to be done. And so I think myself and a lot of people met Liz and just thought, right, I'm staying to help this lady out because she's doing good. So I ended up staying a year. And it wasn't until, that was December 2015, it wasn't until May, like I said, I started filming. And then June, I think, when I started filming with the idea of making a feature.
And it's not just your footage, you couldn't have been in all of those places. So how did you manage to kind of collate so much?
Well, yeah, so the final film, I'd say, is about the life of the camp. But obviously the camp was founded in April, long before I arrived as a volunteer. And then my first few months as a volunteer was as a carpenter, so there's a lot of time that I wasn't filming. And most of my footage that I shot, by the way, makes up about half of the film, and the other half is made up of 30 other individuals. Some people have contributed bigger scenes, some people just mobile phone footage, but it's real collage of all this different experience. I knew that I wanted to tell the story of the whole camp with this structure that you see, and I just needed to find the footage to tell that narrative. And there are a few people here in the audience, I think, who've contributed very significant scenes, which were a big help. But one of the main people was a filmmaker called Katie Barlow. She filmed some scenes with Liz, the one with Liz and Jamil in the shelter, and the scene in New York. And it's really with these scenes combined with my footage, which was mostly of the final eviction, that's when we really realised, we have a feature here.
Liz, those scenes that Tom's just mentioned with Jamil, with Ahmed, those are some of the most kind of devastating moments. It really brings it home. So can you tell us about what happened to them and the children that you worked with?
So the majority of young people we worked with did eventually make it to the UK by hook or by crook. Some through the Dubs scheme that was initiated from the camp. Lots of them end up in Birmingham. And with Jamil, he obviously was a very traumatised young person and didn't cope very well with being put in foster care, so it was quite problematic. At one point he phoned me and said he was coming back to Calais, which I felt wasn't a good idea. So I ended up relocating him to Birmingham, and Jamil came and lived with me. So Jamil's been living with me since 2016. He was very happy to get his first school uniform, and he's now 19, I said, no, he's 19, young man about town in Birmingham, and he's got his own flat, and you know, he's moving on slowly but surely, but still experiences the impact of what he experienced through the journey from leaving home, from being away from his family. So he's doing well, considering. Lots of the others, I'm still in touch with so many of them, which is lovely. So I certainly get lots of messages around about Eid, and I think we're going up to do some gardening. Most of them are kind of past 18. 99% of them have got their status, which is the biggie, and you know, we're in touch because you know, those relationships, we were there for about a year and a half, so there was a strong bond. So yeah, we're still in touch with most of them. There's a lot.
That's lovely to hear. Juliet, there are going to be a lot of people who are sitting in the audience thinking, what can I do then? You know, what's the next step? So what role do you think that citizens, as opposed to the government, for example, play in supporting refugees? What can people do when they leave here?
Oh God, I mean, that's a huge, it's a brilliant question and completely pertinent, but well look, I mean, everybody in this room I'm sure knows that we are facing the most horrendously brutal Home Office even than we thought we had at that time. I mean, at this time it was, it's so interesting to hear what Liz is saying, that all those kids, almost all those kids ended up in the UK. I will get back to answering the question, but I just want to say that because Safe Passage, a charity dedicated to getting children over, because they have the Dubs Amendment and they have the Dublin Treaty, which is an EU treaty which legislates for children who have a family member in a country can apply, even though it's not their first country of asylum, which is a rule for adults, can apply to be reunited with that family member. And that was, the Dublin Treaty was an EU treaty which we lost after Brexit. And we also lost the Dubs Amendment, which was a commitment to bringing 3,000, is it Liz, kids over. We lost both, this country lost both those amendments. So Safe Passage, which is a charity which processed Liz's children's applications for asylum, brought over 1,000 kids over when that camp was evacuated. Over 1,000. The same charity I met up with a couple of weeks ago, last year they brought 6. So that's the reality now in this country, that children have there is no safe route for kids to get into this country, and I mean, let alone adults. I mean, I'm sure we all know this in the room. So I mean, all I say to people now is just don't sit around and talk about it. I don't want to have any more conversations in North London sitting around kitchen tables. Everybody has to become an activist. That's my view. I mean, forgive me if it sounds sort of bullying, but I just think this is what we're up against. We are governed by a group of people who have no morality and certainly have no compassion and have not actually any real intelligence on this issue either, because it's a very stupid policy apart from being brutal. Across the country, millions of dollars, achieved nothing. They've got absolutely everything wrong. They are obsessed with the notion of deterrence, but it doesn't work. It's because all their information, because it's not a policy shaped by information, it's a policy shaped by the brutal bias and ideology, outright right ideology. So I don't know all I would say is everybody in the room, if you'd like to get involved, connect to your local Together with Refugees. There are many, many ways in which you can become active, and I would strongly suggest not only is it important to do, but it's also really good for your mental health, because at least you'll be reminded that you do have agency. We're not entirely victimised by this government. We do have agency, and change has only ever come from ordinary people putting together. So I would just I would just say, join something, find out, you know, what's going on in your local community. Together with Refugees is a brilliant, I mean, Care for Cali, there's lots of organisations with, you know, help, Choose Love. There are plenty of organisations out there doing amazing work all the time, and you know, every single person can find some way in which to contribute a lot. So just, you know, get active is what I would say, loosely speaking.
Thank you. Gulwali, I know you were sitting in the audience watching this in tears. You said you sobbed for an hour because it resonated so much. It's a memory for you. So how did your experience as a 13-year-old in Calais compare with the children that Liz was working with?
Sure. Firstly, can I say thank you for coming, thank you for staying, and thank you the people on the panel for all their efforts and dedication in supporting refugees. To be honest, watching this film was very personal in terms of like all the stories, and I could hear the language. You know, when people are speaking Pashto, the language that I could understand. It was a bit more funny than the English version. Yeah, it's heartbreaking to see that, you know, there's still children and women at that place. In my view, when I was there in 2007, I was there in November and October. It was very cold. The thing that kept me going, I was there for a month. Until, actually, when people say what they could do, they could read my book if you haven't already. But such a bad with promoting. But anyway, so once I was there, until I wrote the book 8 years ago, I thought I was there for 3 months. That's how bad the conditions were. And then I was actually there, when I worked it out, I was there for a month. The thing that helped me overcome the challenges and the misery of Calais was the volunteers. So at the time in 2007, there wasn't any informal camp. It was just like we had tents all over the jungle, and the police used to harass us on a daily basis. They used to wake us up every morning, arrest us for no reason, took us to the police station, kept us there for 10 hours, 20 hours, at their discretion. And the only place we were safe was the lunch place where we used to get lunch near the station. There was a place, there's some cabin, and also there was a place at church where we used to get some food in the evening and some clothes. So when I was in Calais, the thing that really touched me was the volunteers, the people basically going out their comfort zone and supporting us. I once burned my face with chemicals in the back of a truck. The volunteers took me to the hospital, and the refrigerator story, I was in the back of a refrigerator lorry, and it was very similar to the one that Ahmed and his brother was in, and also the 39 Vietnamese people died in. So I could have lost my life at the end of the journey. I was on this journey for over a year across half of the world. Anyways, Calais was miserable, more difficult than I thought. I was so close, I was so far. I was hoping to be reunited with my brother. And you know, when people say France is a safe country, they haven't watched the film. They need to see this film to understand that for people like me, France wasn't a safe country. In fact, when I went back in 2015-16, when the book was published, I was a very different reception I received. And I told the police officer there, I said, I was here a few years ago and you guys treated me like shit. I apologize with my language. And now, because I have a piece of paper, so we treat people based on their passports and documents, or not based on our humanity. So yeah, watching the film really resonates and brings back memories, and I wish we lived in a world where we have moved on from that. The thing that really makes me sad is we're still experiencing, I mean at the time at least, although I was against having a camp in Calais, the informal camp, but that place should not have existed in the first place. But it's better to have something like that than not have anything. And so now when I think about the children there, it's cold, I mean now it's getting warmer, but over the winter, it's very, very tough, and I think the government passing the illegal migration bill, the language, the rhetoric, the dehumanization, the demonization, I just, as Juliet said, that they're not informed by facts and figures, they're informed by this right-wing ideology, this idea of deterrence, detention, deportation works when it hasn't. More and more people are coming across the channel. I never thought I'd see people coming, I should answer shortly, but should give short answers, but I never thought I'd see people crossing small boats, because when I crossed from Turkey to Greece, that was an experience where our boat was about to be capsized. So I never imagined this happening in the English Channel, the world's busiest water, the world's dangerous water. It's happening because when I was in Calais, there was 1 or 2 fences. Now there are 7 fences. We spent 200 million or so on basically keeping people out. People will find more and more dangerous routes. So even we're trying to stop the boats, which wouldn't happen, but if it does happen, that means more and more life will be a risk. So yes, I urge people to watch this film, read refugee stories. There's a really good book coming out about Calais, Conversation from Calais, by a friend, Matilda, if you guys know. These are the volunteers basically sharing their stories. It's brilliant. So it's coming out. And if you haven't read The Lightless Guy, do that. And there's another book coming out, Asylum Speaker. So I'm trying to promote books tonight. But watch the film, get your friends to watch the films, get everybody to understand and see this. It's, you know, they can't deny this reality. And they have to understand we have a responsibility. I realize that the taxpayer, we pay the French through our government to harass refugees, basically. The people being tear gassed, the people's shoes being taken away, tents burned down as we speak, perhaps, is that, we fund it, and the UK government gives money for the French to do whatever to stop these people. So we have a moral obligation, we have a duty, as Liz was saying in the film. We need to do something about it, going on demonstration, joining our local refugee groups, amplifying refugee voices, and basically supporting charities and organizations who are working on the ground there. So especially now that the humanitarian efforts, what Liz was doing or what other people were doing in the film now has been criminalized by the UK law as well as the French and the EU laws. So not only is seeking refuge criminalized or refugees being criminalized and penalized, but now these people who are helping them also been criminalized. So even more now it's important for us to make a stand and take action. I'm sorry I spoke for long.
I'd like to turn it over to you guys now, so if you do have a question, please stick your hand up. Is anyone going to be brave enough? Yes, we have a question. Here we've got a microphone. Can you put your hand up again just so we get a mic to you? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Liz, if you're willing to share, I would love to hear a little bit more about your background and what took you to Calais in the first place. Your heart is so evidently huge and enormous, and I just wonder what the influences on you have been to take you there.
No pressure.
Sorry.
It was a very practical situation, I'm afraid, so it's not going to be anything other than that. I was working at Glastonbury Festival, so part of the work was to supervise the biggest litter pick probably on the planet, and obviously there was a huge amount of camping kit abandoned after that festival. And I literally went for lunch, and I think it was a Sunday magazine, and in the magazine it was the first time I'd heard of it. It was the beginnings of what we now know was the Calais jungle. I kind of looked at it and thought, well, it would be stupid not to. So I spoke with farm manager and Emily Evis, and they went, yeah, great, and they supported a number of journeys. Obviously, when I got there, I kind of realised I'm an ex-firefighter and I've got various useful skills that were quite handy in that situation. First aid and kind of being okay in a crisis, that kind of experience. I got sucked in like everybody else, and yeah, that's about it really.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions for our panel? Yeah, we've got one down here.
Yeah, so I volunteered, like I'm sure a lot of people
Put a
here.
mic on there.
We can hear you, but still.
I volunteered, like I'm sure other people did here, and there was I asked at the time, what does success look like for the camp? And one of the organisers there was a guy who worked for a French organisation. He said, we want to build the coolest suburb in Calais and keep it and make it vibrant and diverse and dynamic and amazing. And I thought that was such a powerful, beautiful vision. Obviously the police and many other things got in the way of that, but given the complexity of the situation, what does success look like from your perspective? What is, and that's a difficult question, but what does it look like if this was to work, if the right solution was to be found, what would it be?
A processing centre in France and safe and legal routes. No camps, okay.
Yeah, I think success would be that place should not exist. And I think, although I agree in theory with processing center in Calais, I mean, we see with the Ukrainians not coming through the boats or the jungle because they have safe and legal routes and they have humanitarian corridors. I was in Moldova recently, and as well as in Poland once. I saw the plane full of Ukrainian women and children. I was touched as a refugee campaigner, but I was also disappointed that this is not happening to anybody else, and that's not available to anyone else. So success would be that place is a shame for France and Britain that it exists, But there are also other places in Eastern Europe and how people have been pushed back from Bosnia and Croatia to Bosnia and the situation in the Greek islands and everywhere else. So I feel like countries need to take responsibility. This idea, go anywhere but Britain, there's this exceptionalism in the UK that these guys who are coming here, they're not genuine refugees. If they were, they would be staying in France. Well, actually, the 100,000 a year stays in France. And of course, things could be better in France, but we also have a legal obligation. Also, people have a right to go wherever they feel like they want to go. And in my case, I'm going through about 12,000 miles or so. I was in prison in almost every country that I went through as a child, except Italy. I would have stayed in Italy and I would be speaking Italian now if it weren't for my brother who was supposedly here. So, when people say to me, why the UK? I say, why not the UK? Because, we can't, because we are the furthest in the world, that we have a sea border. So I think success would be that camp should not exist, or that, it's a very dangerous place. It's built on a wasteful field, whatever, I don't know the environmental situation, but I know that this is a very dangerous land, the Kali jungle is. So that place should not be existence, and people should be able to claim asylum in the UK in the most humane way possible. And they should be able either to come through humanitarian corridors or be allowed to come in and seek asylum in their cases should be processed. But that's idealistic because we have a bill going through Parliament which will precisely ban asylum, and we already have laws from last year and the year before where basically people are treated differently how they arrive. Depending on the modes of their arrival, they will be penalized for. So my friend Shafiq actually was in prison for illegal entry for 12 months. He came here to seek asylum. He spent 6 months in jail and then released on bail for the next 6 months, wearing a tag, had to go to immigration reporting centers every week, had to go to probation every week. Probation is for something that you should not recommit that offense. He hasn't committed any crime, but he still has to go and sign on every week. But the poor lady at the probation service is very understanding. She has never come across anything like it before, but she was like, yeah, you can come in, we can have a coffee and tea and we can catch up.
Yeah, I would echo what everybody else is saying. Safe and legal routes, that's the mantra, and it is an interesting fact that when the camp was evacuated, Liz probably put me right on it, but I think this is the right figure, about 7,500 people's cases were processed finally by the government. 86% of those people met the very tough criteria of our Home Office, right? So 86%, and that's the tough criteria of the Home Office, were allowed in because they were legitimate refugees. So just hold that fact up against the culture which insists that most people are coming because they want better lives and they're economic. Migrants. Let's start by not using that word. The word refugee is going off the radar. But so absolutely, I would say what everybody else is saying, that all those resources, all that money, all that wastage, and the money that's now being wasted on a stupid and inhuman Rwanda scheme, millions and millions of pounds have been spent on that scheme. Not one person, thank God, has yet gone. But the stupid wastage, but largely of human resources. Hopefully, I work also alongside a charity called Breaking Barriers, who exists once people have got their refugee status, to find meaningful and dignified, sort of respectable work for refugees arriving in this country. We have these massive, we have this massive crisis in the employment sector, as we know, in all sorts of industries: haulage, long distance driving, hospitality, agriculture, the NHS, nurses, doctors. There's a huge care industry, chronic lack of staffing. Many refugees want to work in those sectors, have skills and training to work in those sectors, and would certainly be, and the charity finds that when people are allowed to work, they work with determination, dedication, So it's insane what's going on. It's just insane that we have these, the government is sending, groups out to try and recruit people in the Far East to come back and be nurses in the NHS, and then turning women away, and then, who want to be, none of it's making any sense. So I think success would be the non-existent, as everybody else is saying, of that camp, but the putting of those resources into a system that where the dots were joined,
I'd just like to add that I think it's important to recognise the really beautiful things that can come, that people are capable of in desperate situations. But I think it's very important not to romanticise the camp, because it is still a poverty-stricken, a dire situation where people don't have any rights. And yes, there were some really great shops and restaurants and communities built there, but it was still an appalling place to be where awful things happened. And yeah, I guess, that's all I'd say.
was wondering, because we were talking a lot about the safe passage, but I'm also wondering how is the reception once you arrive to the UK? How do people, because I can imagine it can be also quite hostile. I don't know, from your experience or what you know about other people's experience, what you have to say about that.
Great question. I'll give a short answer. It's terrible. Actually, I was, as Liz was saying, Jamal wanted to go back to Calais. When I go to the UK, I thought that was the end, but it was another battle, another struggle. It took me 2 years to convince the local authority in Kent that I was an unaccompanied minor at the age of 13. They didn't believe my age. The Home Office did not believe I was an Afghan national. Actually, they threatened to deport me twice, presumably sending me to Afghanistan, but didn't believe I was from Afghanistan. So it took me 5 years to get my refugee status. I was criminalized, penalized, dehumanized. Literally, I actually attempted suicide twice, even though it's not easy as an Afghan to speak about that, but actually it's in the book. I explained that things became so bad that I thought there was no point to life. So when you get to the UK, it's a lot more harder than the physical journey, because the physical journey, you have hopes, you have faith, you have people helping you, supporting you, and you have the determination to get to your destination for all sorts of reasons. And when you get to that final destination, it's not what you thought. So, and the UK government is very pleased about that, because they want to make it as hostile, as difficult as possible. So yeah, my life was very challenging, and it took me about 3 years to be fostered, and then I was able to go to school and university and college and so on thereafter. But at the start, even now I'm a citizen. I went back to Afghanistan after 16 years to see my mother, although I promised to answer shortly. But I went to Afghanistan after 16 years. I was afraid of the Taliban. They're very unpredictable. They're terrible. They do some bad stuff to people. But I was more afraid coming back and finding out that my citizenship is being revoked. So I was more afraid of the UK government. So even after 16 years of living here, becoming citizen after 14 years, I still don't feel safe. The Home Secretary can revoke my citizenship any day at her discretion and her wish. And I mean, she would very be pleased to see me on a flight out of this country. But anyhow, so yeah, things are not great on this end. The only thing that makes it good is the people who support refugees, who provide solidarity and compassion, like Breaking Barriers, Choose Love, the City of Sanctuary, other charities who actually help people integrate and support them overcome those challenges and difficulties.
Thank you so much. Another one is Calais Appeal, I think, who are doing.
Yes.
Yes, Calais Appeal are a charity who pool donations and contribute them to 7 organisations, no, 8 organisations on the ground in Calais, some of which you've seen their work in the film. And there are human rights watchers, there's Refugee Community Kitchen, there's a Woodyard, there's food, there's a women's centre, I can't remember the others. Utopia 56 is a French organisation. So that all of the organisations you see working in the film, they are the donations come from Calais Appeal, who are here tonight.
Please give generously.
There are some leaflets, and also there's Felix, who's going to be on the door with a card machine if anybody wants to give. But yeah, it's a worthy cause. But also do more research, look into other things that are happening here in England as well.
And if people want to tell their friends about this film, they want to share this film, how can people watch it?
Yes. Luckily I made this. There's that. And we're on tour. We have 13 screens booked, and including this one, but more on the way. And on ourdoorstep.com, doc.com.
And if your friends can't make it to the cinema, we're also on the Curzon Home Cinema platform.
Yeah, Curzon Home Cinema, we're on there for a year. So thank you very much, Curzon.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to ask a question, we haven't had a chance, then some of our panel is going to be in the bar afterwards and get a chance to have a chat. I'm afraid I think we have to get out now, which is such a shame, but thank you so much for your questions.